Simple version for fifth graders. Here's what they're not telling you. There's 37 seconds of recorded sound that got out from a private meeting room at the vice president's house. J.D. Vance, the man who usually stays calm when cameras are watching, completely lost his temper. And when you hear what he said about Judge Caldwell, you'll understand why people working in the government are using one word: war. Not pretend war, not just political fighting, but actual war over our Constitution. Because what Judge Caldwell just did, putting witness 14 in jail without explaining why, keeping the whole thing secret, and challenging the White House to do something about it, broke every rule that's supposed to keep different parts of government separate. Vance heard about it as it was happening, and his reaction is now the most downloaded sound clip on 3 continents. So what made the vice president so angry? One phone call, one choice, one judge who thought nobody would stand up to it. Judge Caldwell looked at witness 14, someone helping with one of the most important immigration cases in 10 years, and ordered him put in jail right away. No warning, no hearing, no public record of the reason. But here's the important part. This wasn't random. This was weeks of the judge pushing harder and harder until things finally exploded. And I'm going to show you exactly how it all broke down. The leaked recording everyone's talking about is coming. But first, you need to understand what witness 14 actually means and why Judge Caldwell wanted so badly to silence him. Because witness 14 isn't just some random person being deported or a government paperwork note. According to people who know directly about the case, this witness was ready to tell the court about teamwork between certain judges and activist groups working to stop federal immigration enforcement. That's not a crazy theory. That's what several people in the room say was about to come out. And in 45 minutes before that testimony was planned, Judge Caldwell made his move. The timing wasn't an accident, it was planned. And J.D. Vance knew it the second he heard. Here's what actually happened. The moment that turned a legal case into a crisis over our Constitution. Tuesday morning. Protected federal courthouse. Witness 14 had been brought in under federal protection, surrounded by U.S. Marshals who reported directly to the Department of Justice. He walked in ready to talk. You could see it in how he held himself, shoulders back, eyes forward, the way someone stands who has accepted whatever is going to happen. Many people watching noticed he seemed calm, almost relieved. The court meeting was supposed to be normal. Witness 14 would tell his story. Lawyers would ask questions. Everything would be written down. That's when Judge Caldwell came out from his private office with a look that made the marshals worried. He didn't sit down. He stood behind his desk, shuffled exactly 2 papers, and announced that because of new national security worries that he couldn't talk about, witness 14 would be sent to federal jail while waiting for more review. The room went silent. This witness is now detained until this court decides whether his testimony would hurt ongoing secret matters. Marshals, take him into custody. The government's lawyer jumped to her feet. Your Honor, this witness is under federal protection according to... Counselor, sit down. This court's power is more important than your agency's preferences. That word, preferences. That's what started everything. Because protecting a federal witness isn't a preference, it's the law. And Judge Caldwell just crumpled it up and threw it in the trash while the courtroom audio was recording. Witness 14 was taken out through a side door. No chance to object. No explanation of what secret matters supposedly made his detention necessary. The entire thing took less than 3 minutes. But here's what nobody saw coming. The court reporter was still recording. Every word, every pause, every dismissive sound from Judge Caldwell's mouth. And within hours, that audio was in the hands of people who knew exactly what to do with it. The first call went to DOJ leadership. The second call went to the White House. The third call went to DAG, Vance's personal secure phone line, and that's when everything changed. Because while the government had been trying to handle judges overstepping through proper channels, filing appeals, making statements, working within the system, Judge Caldwell had just made that impossible. You don't jail a protected federal witness. You especially don't jail one who's about to testify about possible teamwork between judges and outside activist groups. And you absolutely don't do it while claiming national security powers you don't actually have. Vance listened to the audio 3 times. According to someone in the room, he didn't say a word during the first 2 times. The third time, he stopped it halfway through Judge Caldwell's preferences line and looked at his chief lawyer. That's it. That's the line. What happened in the next 37 seconds is now being hotly debated inside Washington. Because Vance didn't write a statement, he didn't call for a calm response, he went somewhere nobody expected, and someone recorded it. The leaked audio, which I checked with two separate sources, captures the Vice President of the United States saying things about a sitting federal judge that would have been unthinkable 6 months ago. Unthinkable, but maybe not wrong, because what Judge Caldwell did wasn't just aggressive, wasn't just overstepping. According to legal experts I've talked with, it may have been the single most challenging judicial act against the president's power since the Civil War, and J.D. Vance responded exactly the way you'd expect from someone who's watched judges chip away at democratic accountability for months. He declared war. If you're watching this thinking, finally, someone's covering this, hit subscribe right now, because what I'm about to show you about that leaked audio and the response it caused, nobody else has this, and you're going to want to hear every word. But not everyone sees it that way. Civil liberties groups are calling this the most dangerous growth of presidential power in modern American history. And honestly, when you hear their side, you might understand why. Their position is simple. Judges exist to check when the president oversteps. That's not corruption. That's how the Constitution is designed. And when a government attacks a judge for doing his job, they're not fighting for democracy, they're tearing it down. One well-known legal rights director put it this way: what we saw was a judge making a difficult decision in a secret case where he had information the public doesn't have. The vice president's response calling for what amounts to scaring judges is exactly what dictators do. This is textbook. Social media is exploding with opposition reactions. Posts calling Vance unhinged. Posts comparing the government to regimes that imprison judges. Posts warning that witness 14's detention might have been completely justified based on information the government itself provided. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Judge Caldwell does have authority over his own courtroom. He does have freedom to decide in matters involving secret information. That's not made up. People are acting like this judge went rogue, one judicial rights lawyer noted. But federal judges make detention decisions every day. The only difference here is that the president's team didn't like this one. Since when does the White House get to override a judge's choices? So who's right? Is Vance actually defending constitutional balance, or did he just reveal what happens when a government faces a judge who won't cooperate? Is Judge Caldwell protecting secret information, or is he silencing a witness who is about to reveal something embarrassing? That's the question nobody wants to answer. And the more you look into this, the messier it gets. Because the truth is, both sides have documents, both sides have legal arguments, and both sides are absolutely certain the other is destroying the country. But this didn't come out of nowhere. 6 weeks before this explosion, the warning signs were everywhere. It started with a routine appeal in February. Judge Caldwell stopped a deportation order. Standard stuff happens constantly. But the language he used caught attention. He didn't just mention legal precedent. He lectured the government about moral obligations that are more important than government convenience. Government officials were annoyed. One senior DOJ person said something that should have been a wake-up call. This judge isn't interpreting law. He's replacing our policy with his own preferences. And at some point, that stops being judging and starts being something else. Did anyone listen? Did anyone pull back? Not even close. Week after week, Judge Caldwell expanded his actions. He didn't just rule on cases. He made sweeping statements about presidential power. He demanded documents the DOJ claimed were private. He held government lawyers in contempt when they didn't comply fast enough. Every ruling he pushed harder, every time he got away with it. The witness 14 situation had been brewing for weeks before it exploded. Court filings show the government had been trying to schedule his testimony for nearly a month. Each time, Judge Caldwell found procedural reasons to delay. Then came the sealed motion. 3 days before witness 14 was jailed, Judge Caldwell received a sealed filing from an unnamed party. Nobody in the government knows what it said. Nobody outside the judge's office has seen it. But something in that filing changed everything. Suddenly, a witness who'd been cooperating became a, quote, national security concern. Suddenly, testimony that was about to happen became delayed indefinitely. Suddenly, a man under federal protection was in a cell. The stage was set, the witness was silenced, and J.D. Vance had no idea that when he walked into that briefing room, he was about to step onto a battlefield that would define his vice presidency. Drop a like if you see where this is going. Because the fight between Vance and Judge Caldwell isn't just political theater. It's a collision between two ideas of who actually runs this country. And the leaked audio is about to change everything. And then it happened. The leaked audio begins with muffled background noise, someone closing a door, paper shuffling, then Vance's voice, clear and cold. Play it again, the part where he says preferences. The courtroom audio replays, Judge Caldwell's dismissive tone filling the secure room. Silence. 5 seconds. 10. Then Vance, barely controlled. This judge just imprisoned the federal witness to stop him from testifying about judicial teamwork with outside groups, and he did it on camera. And he thinks we're going to file an appeal and wait 6 months. A staffer's voice. Cautious. Sir, the proper channel is exactly what he's counting on. He knows by the time any appeal is heard, witness 14 will be useless. That's not judging. That's not even pretending to judge anymore. More silence. Then the line that's now everywhere. If Judge Caldwell wants a war with the president's team, he just got one. I want every tool we have on his desk by Friday. Every legal option, every enforcement tool, everything. A voice tries to interrupt about separation of powers. Vance cuts them off. Separation of powers goes both ways. He just separated a protected witness from his constitutional rights. Now he learns what happens when the president's team stops asking permission. 37 seconds. That's all it took. 37 seconds to declare open war between the vice president and a sitting federal judge. But here's what everyone missed while they were focused on Vance's anger. Listen to the last 5 seconds of that audio again. There's a voice in the background, someone the press hasn't identified, saying 3 words. The list worked. What list? Worked how? Because what that unnamed voice suggests is that witness 14's detention wasn't Judge Caldwell acting alone. It was coordinated, and someone just confirmed it. This wasn't an emotional reaction. This was Vance realizing the trap he'd suspected was real. Don't go anywhere. What I'm about to reveal about that background voice changes everything. Drop a comment right now. Who do you think said the list worked? Because when I traced that audio, I found something that made my blood run cold. People who do this for a living are calling this the most important constitutional collision since Watergate. One former federal prosecutor, someone who's argued before the Supreme Court more times than he can count, explained it this way. What we're watching isn't a legal dispute. It's a contest over who's legitimate. Both branches are now claiming the other has gone so far beyond its power that normal rules don't apply. When that happens, there's no referee. There's no appeal. There's just power. What does that mean in plain English? It means we're in territory where the Constitution doesn't have clear answers. Both sides can point to precedent. Both sides can claim they're defending democracy. And both sides are willing to make things worse. Here's what constitutional law experts are whispering to each other behind closed doors. The government is going to use enforcement tools that haven't been used since the 1950s. Judge Caldwell knows this. He's betting they won't actually do it. If he's wrong, we're looking at U.S. Marshals facing off against court officers. Nobody wants to say that out loud, but that's where this goes. But it's not just government supporters. Even some who've criticized Vance are admitting something uncomfortable. Look, I think the vice president's words are dangerous. But I also can't defend what Judge Caldwell did. You don't jail a federal witness to prevent testimony. You just don't. Whatever his reasons, that act was so far outside normal judicial behavior that I understand why the response is volcanic. The message is clear. This isn't about immigration anymore. This isn't even about witness 14 anymore. This is about who gets to decide what happens when the courts and the president's team disagree fundamentally about what the law means. That question has been lurking under American politics for decades. Now it's not lurking anymore, and no one knows how it ends. Smash that like button if this explanation is making sense to you. Because understanding what's really happening here, beyond the headlines, beyond the political spin, is the only way to see where this is going. And trust me, where it's going is unprecedented. So what does this mean for you? Right now, every federal judge in the country is watching. According to sources inside the judiciary, emergency meetings have been called in at least 4 circuit courts. Judges are being told about security procedures. Some are asking for protection details. Here's the thing. If you think this only affects rich people in Washington, think again. Those judges rule on cases that affect your taxes, your property rights, your business. When judges feel threatened, they don't become more careful. They become more defensive. And defensive judges make unpredictable rulings. In the next 2 weeks, expect the government to announce enforcement actions against what they're calling judicial obstruction. Nobody knows exactly what that means, but the options range from ignoring court orders to potentially arresting court officials who interfere with federal operations. If you're someone who cares about rule of law on either side of this is the moment where words become actions. But the bigger picture, that's what keeps me up at night. is Vance follows through. If the president's team actually starts treating certain court orders as illegitimate and unenforceable, the precedent is permanent. Every future president from either party will have this playbook. Courts that rule against the government could be ignored. Judges who push back could be isolated, investigated, or worse. That's not exaggeration. That's what constitutional scholars are publishing in academic journals right now. And here's what nobody wants to talk about. What if the president's team is right? What if Judge Caldwell really is coordinating with outside groups? What if Witness 14 really was about to expose something that would embarrass or prove crimes by members of the judiciary? What if the courts really have been weaponized against a democratically elected government? In that case, what's the right response? Write strongly worded letters? File appeals that take years? Wait politely while the system works against you? Because that's the argument Vance is making. Not that he's above the law, but that the law is being manipulated by people who've captured the institutions meant to enforce it. If that's true, playing by the rules means losing by the rules. And that's not a comfortable thought, but it's the thought that's driving everything you're seeing right now. And then Vance made it worse. After the audio leaked and the government knew it would leak, the vice president did something nobody expected. He confirmed it, not reluctantly, not with carefully chosen legal language. He stood in front of cameras and said, "Yes, that's my voice. Yes, I said those things. And yes, I meant every word." Instead of taking it back, he made things worse. Judge Caldwell imprisoned a cooperating federal witness to prevent testimony that would have exposed judicial corruption. Let me say that again. A federal judge used his courtroom to obstruct justice. If that's not a crisis, I don't know what is. The reaction online was immediate. Impeach Caldwell trended for 6 straight hours, but so did Number Protect Our Courts. The country split in real time. But here's where it gets dangerous. Within hours of Vance's statement, reports came out that certain federal agencies were being told to rethink compliance frameworks with courts that have ruled against the government. That's bureaucratic language, but translated it means we might stop following their orders. Judge Caldwell responded through the court's public information office. The judiciary will not be intimidated. This court will continue to fulfill its constitutional obligations regardless of political pressure. Then he added something that sent Washington into overdrive. The witness remains in custody for his own protection. The vice president's statements have made that custody more necessary, not less. His own protection from what? From whom? Vance's team shot back within the hour. If Judge Caldwell believes the vice president poses a threat to a federal witness, he should say so under oath. Otherwise, he's using hints to justify unlawful detention. This isn't ending. It's getting worse. And both sides are now locked into positions where backing down looks like surrender. But here's what's bothering me. Where is Witness 14 right now? The government doesn't know. Judge Caldwell's court isn't saying. The marshals who are protecting him have been reassigned. Why was that sealed motion filed 3 days before his detention? And who filed it? Sources are telling me the government has gotten records showing unusual communication patterns between Judge Caldwell's office and at least 2 advocacy organizations in the weeks before this happened. They're not releasing those records yet, but they're letting people know they exist. The Department of Justice is already preparing what one official called the nuclear option, though nobody will say what that means. Vance reportedly told his staff, "We're not asking anymore. We're telling. Something is building. And when it breaks, we're looking at the most significant fight between branches of government in any of our lifetimes. This isn't a policy dispute. This is a fight over who actually controls the machinery of the American government. And right now, both sides believe they're going to win." Subscribe now because the next video drops the moment something breaks. And based on what I'm hearing from sources inside both camps, that moment is coming fast. Turn on notifications. When this explodes, and it will explode, I'll be here first. Here's where things stand right now. Witness 14 remains in custody at an unknown federal location. His lawyers have filed emergency motions, but Judge Caldwell has refused to hear them. The government's formal response to his detention is expected within 72 hours. The vice president has scheduled a, quote, "major address on judicial accountability" for later this week. Advanced copies haven't leaked, but staff members are describing it as historic. Judge Caldwell is reportedly talking with other federal judges about, quote, "coordinated responses to presidential pressure." But here's what's not in any report. Multiple sources tell me the government has already identified the 2 advocacy organizations that communicated with Judge Caldwell's office. They're building a case and they're planning to go public before the vice president's address. Watch for announcements about, quote, judicial ethics investigations in the next 48 hours. That's the tell. If those announcements come, it means the government is done playing defense. They're going on offense against sitting judges. The clock is ticking, and what happens in the next few days could fundamentally reshape how American government works. But here's what's keeping me up at night. J.D. Vance is making his move right now. It looks like righteous anger. It looks like a government finally fighting back against judges overstepping. But I've been doing this long enough to know stories like this never end clean. That background voice on the leaked audio, the one saying the list worked, still hasn't been identified. Witness 14's location is still unknown. And there's a rumor going around Washington that won't die, that Judge Caldwell has documentation of his own, something that explains his actions, something that would change the entire story if it came out. Is that desperation? Is that real? Or is it false information planted to make the government hesitate? I don't know yet, but I know this. Whatever happens next is going to be bigger, darker, and more explosive than anyone's predicting, because this stopped being about one witness and one judge the moment that audio leaked. This is now about who controls America, the people who win elections or the people who never have to. The question is, will you be watching when the answer becomes clear? Subscribe notifications on, because when this breaks, and it will break, I'll be here. And trust me, something is about to happen.